I'm very excited here today to have Dai Davis here. Pleasure to have you here, Dai. Thank you very much. Dai just did a talk on GDPR and why you won't get fined at Cybertalks. So Alex, if you could put cybertalks.co.uk at the bottom there, just so everyone knows and they can see Dai's talk. Thank you very much for doing this today, Dai.
You're welcome, dear. I enjoyed it.
Now, I'm not sure if everyone knows about you, but there's a few little things that we were talking about previously, which I thought people should know about you. So you're one of the non-exec directors of FAST, is that correct?
I am. Federation Against Software Theft, which is, well, its day job is making sure, trying to encourage people to comply with software licenses, have the right number of software licenses for their organisation, and occasionally even enforce where people have not got the right number of software licenses in their business.
You also mentioned that you won an award. You said it was the 1906 award, that's what you said to me.
Yeah, which makes me sound very old, doesn't it? I'm not that old, no. It's a bit, yeah, it's not, it's an award which several people get every year. But it's essentially for long service, giving your time away for free to international standards. So there's an international electrotechnical committee which I chair, which is to do with essentially legal aspects of geeky standards, particularly when those standards start talking about defects and things like that. They need a bunch of lawyers to give them some advice about it.
Excellent, excellent. And there was one more point which you said to me, which I thought was quite funny, which I had to ask you what that actually meant, right?
Yeah.
And the quote was, "You drive your sheep over London Bridge."
Well, I don't drive them personally, but it's one of those, one of the very few benefits that it does give you, which is the right to drive your sheep over London Bridge, which is a bit artificial because you can drive them over London Bridge, but you haven't got any right to drive them to London Bridge.
So are you allowed to drive sheep? Is that what that means?
No, it does mean that.
Okay.
But in reality, what it means is that it's one of the few remaining perks that you get as a Freeman of the City of London. So why am I a Freeman of the City of London? 25,000 people are Freeman of the City of London. It's because I'm a member of what's called the Worshipful Company of, you might think it's strange for a lawyer, information technologists. So it's IT people, some of whom are members of the Worshipful Company of Information Technologists, and that's one of the very few. The other interesting quirk is that you can't get press ganged. I bet you don't know what press gang is. No, press gang is. So in the 17th, 18th century, they didn't have enough sailors. So the sailors would go out, existing sailors would go out and they'd get people drunk, and then the next thing they'd find them was on a ship, press ganged into being in the Royal Navy's service. You can't get press ganged if you're a Freeman of the City of London.
That is a new fact I have learned
since we don't have press gangs anymore, it's not really much of a benefit.
Beautiful. Well, either way, thank you very much for doing this today. Like I said, you've just done a talk. How did you find the talk? Was the audience quite engaging?
Give me that audience any day. I'd much rather speak to an IT audience than a bunch of lawyers.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So there was a few things we were talking about, which I found quite interesting. So you mentioned you were involved in one of the biggest IT deals ever. Is that correct?
Yeah, at the time it was a big deal. In fact, I'll tell you about it because it's not confidential. Because in fact, the whole point was it was a very public deal. Because there's a company called DuPont, which you've probably heard of.
Yes.
And there's a company called Conoco that you've probably heard of. So DuPont brought Conoco. But they couldn't, this is all public knowledge, I'm not giving you any client secrets away here. So DuPont went to the banks and said, we want to buy Conoco. And we want to borrow X billion to do it. And the bank said, how are you going to pay us back? And they said, well, one of the ways we'll pay you back is we're going to outsource the whole of the IT for part of the business, and that will save us. And they obviously had a business plan to save money, and that was a mega deal because, as you can imagine, there was several noughts on the end of the IT deal to actually do it. But this was a US-led deal. I was just doing a little bit on the UK.
You were just doing that little part. You were part of the biggest deal.
A big deal, but only. No single lawyer is going to do a job that big.
So there's not a lot of people I know that have multiple degrees in different areas. So you've got physics, computer science, and legal. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Wow.
So
you love books.
Yeah, but if I'm being really honest, it's very rare that I can put my hand on my heart and say, I'm a better lawyer because I happen to understand the IT
Fair enough.
better. I mean, it does happen. It does happen occasionally. But usually what happens is that somebody explains their technology to me and they say after the end of the meeting, they say, I thought that meeting was going to last longer, Di. And I said, well, why is that? He says, well, because I thought it was going to take me half an hour to explain the technology to you. It took me 5 minutes to explain the technology. So, there are advantages, but they're not direct advantages. I remember the only one of the few times that I can say I was a better lawyer doing the job than any other lawyer was when somebody came to me bizarrely for they'd been doing some works in ceramics. And ceramics are used for lots of things. One of the things that ceramics are used for is the linings of particle accelerators. So you've got these, things underneath CERN, underneath Geneva.
Okay. Explain to me a little bit more.
All right. So these are tiny little particles, protons, for
neutrons,
example. Not neutrons because they're neutral by definition. But no, you're right. Yep. Protons, electrons, things with charge on, and they essentially pump around, and they try and smash them into each other and recreate nuclear fusion, like nuclear fission, I should say, like in the sun.
Okay.
And there are only 4 particle accelerators of any consequence in the world. One's at Stanford, one's at CERN, there's a little one at Harvard in the UK, and there is one in Russia. Well, forget about Russia for a moment. We talk about patenting the ceramic linings of these things because it works out that you have to have a mega high vacuum. I mean, this is a vacuum that's even more of a vacuum than in space.
Okay.
So if you think about anything, it evaporates, You're not going to have...
This is your physics degree coming out.
This is my physics. So anything evaporates. So what doesn't evaporate, it turns out, is fancy ceramics.
Okay.
So this was a new fancy ceramic for the nuclear particle accelerator. So I could tell him which countries they had me to go. So
there you go.
No point getting
There you go. That's what happens when you have a physics degree, computer science.
No point in getting a patent in France, in Italy for it, because they haven't got particle accelerators of any consequence in Italy.
Right. So I'm sure you could talk about all of the physics all day long, right? But the fact of it is, I really want to know about kind of how you got to this point. Obviously GDPR is one of those things that people are talking about, it's happened now, and before it happened, a lot of people were, what is going to happen now it's in effect? So how did you get to that point? What was the first kind of ping where you were like, GDPR, that's what I want to get into, or was it just a natural? It's
a natural progression. In fact, I would say the opposite, because if I'd said to myself, I want to be I'd never say to myself, I want to be a GDPR expert, by which I mean do GDPR's exclusion of everything else. I'd go bonkers with boredom, and it's not what part of the joy of my job is that I get to deal with different technologies all the time.
So when did that light happen? When did you think
it was
I want to go?
Well, 2 years ago, I thought to myself, do I want to get up to speed with GDPR, and I had a choice of doing it or not doing it, because I could still. There's lots of subjects I could do as an IT lawyer without having to do it if I didn't want to. But I thought, no, I'll do GDPR. I want to do it. So I sat down for 3 days, read the legislation, or much of it as I need to know. As I said, it was 92,500 words. So nobody's going to read that in a hurry, all of it. Read a couple of articles about it and decided, I was going to do it. And obviously, I've been doing it for quite some considerable time.
So how long have you been doing talks on GDPR then?
Oh, 2 years.
2 years.
But of course, they've morphed. A year ago even, I was doing general talks, 1 day talks, 2 day talks on what's GDPR all about. Now I'm doing specific subsections of GDPR because most of the people who wanted to know about it already know about it.
Okay, so you're quite controversial when it comes down to GDPR,
Can be.
Like your topic today was why you won't be fined by GDPR.
Yep.
What advice would you give to people who wanted to get into that GDPR space, as consultants or, as managers wanting to make sure their company's GDPR compliant? What advice would you give?
Well, I think I'll answer the latter question, which is much easier. What's a single? Because it's very difficult. People say to me, somebody asked me today afterwards, what's the thing? What do I have to do to do this? And there's no easy answer. If there was, everybody would be saying it. But the one thing I would say is more important for a variety of reasons than anything else is have a decent privacy policy.
Okay.
That will go a long way, not only because it'll keep the Information Commission off your back, but also because it will force you to think about the things, or some of the things that you have to do. Because, for example, if you're doing a privacy policy, you have to state the right to data rectification, which is, as the name suggests, allows people to rectify data which is incorrect. And I can tell you now that will be one of the interesting areas that there will be litigation on.
So do you think people that want to get into that GDPR side should go on courses, or do you think they should go and talk to people like yourself to understand it? Or what would you
I think
suggest?
I mean it's interesting. There's a friend of mine who I've been trying to encourage to become a GDPR person, because I think he's got the right mindset to do it. He likes bureaucracy, he likes regimes, and I think he'd be really good at it. But I do think the starting point is to come on an intro course to half an hour to see whether you taste it, see if you're interested in it. If you are, then go on a day's course. And the reality is that a lot of I went to another consultant's talk about about a year ago, and his talk was for half an hour. It was a great talk. Dodgy GDPR qualifications. There is no such thing as a DDR qualification. At the end of the day, you've either studied it and understand it a bit, or you don't.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that we could have a very, very long conversation about GDPR and its effects and what might happen and what might not happen. But I think there's not enough time to even discuss that. But what I would like to say is I hope the people that are watching this got a little bit of information about who you are and kind of things about GDPR and how to get into GDPR. So thank you very much, Dai. Your website is
www.daidavis.co.uk,
right? Or is it .com? Which
both.
one is it? There you go, both. So if you want to talk to Dai or ask him any questions or hire him for your GDPR side, it's www.daidavis.co.uk. Thank you very much, Dai.
You're welcome.
Pleasure. Thank you.